Welcome back to another episode with the Art of Football 365. I don't know what's in the air today, but I'm fired up. Gannon kind of looks the opposite, but I'm fired up. And no, it's not just a little tequila, but I had to bring in that T-shirt. Bought that off barstools.com, and Tom Brady's a legend, so I had to represent with that. But welcome back, season 2, episode 7, segment 1. And today we're going to be talking about leadership. But before we dive into that conversation, I'd love for you to Gronk spike that subscribe button, leave a like for as many times. Let's come up with a new one right now.
I like the Tony Romo one.
You like the Tony Romo one? All right. Leave a like for as many times as Tony Romo calls out the play at the line of scrimmage, which is almost every play if you watch the NFL on Sunday with Tony Romo in the booth. And leave a comment, just like Troy Aikman does every time Joe Buck sounds like a dad at his son's Little League game, which, I mean, a lot of you people have been to Little League games, and you know what those dads are like. So give us some feedback, all right? All right, so this is our Monday episode. So, as you know, we got a mental Monday for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my quote, and I'll let Gannon talk about his, and we'll get diving into the discussion of leadership. But my quote is, the experience I have had is that once you start talking about and experiencing mental health struggle, you realize that actually you're part of quite a big club. Now, quite honestly, I think that quote speaks volumes, especially for anyone who deals with mental health, which for the people who don't admit it, everyone goes through mental health struggles at some point in their life. So for that quote to make people realize and grasp the understanding that we are all in a world where you're going to go through bumps in the road. It's literally what mental health is. It's like getting onto a roller coaster at the fair, or the circus, whatever you're doing. Six Flags, you're on a roller coaster. Say that roller coaster gets stuck 5 seconds into your ride, and you're stuck right there. It's a bump in the road, is what it is. It's a bump on the roller coaster. It's a stoppage of the roller coaster. It's all about how you bounce back from those problems and can continue to help yourself. And the end of that quote mentions it's quite a big club, and truthfully it is. Every single person in this world goes through struggles, so it's my best advice is to open up, talk to people. You got a problem, address it. You need to talk about something with someone. Be more than willing to find someone who's willing to listen. And I'm that person. So if you need to contact me, my number's on our social media pages. I'll sit there and talk to you for an hour if we have to. And I'm a big mental health advocate. So I thought that was a quite a quite good quote. Oh, jeez, quite good quote that I wanted to incorporate within this episode. So what you got this week, Gannon?
Yeah, I got one that's it's going to lead us into a little bit with our leadership stuff. I got leaders never use the word failure. They look upon setbacks as learning experiences, and it's by Brian Tracy. I think it's a pretty good quote because my baseball coach here at school uses that when we lose or we have a bad day at practice. You're chalking it up as a bad day, but you're also going to learn from that. And that's the thing. Instead of looking at things as being a failure or a bad day, you're going to chalk it up to being a setback because then you're only going to get better the next day from that. And I think that's really important and huge when you're going through different types of stuff in your life is looking at it as a learning experience. If something goes bad, what are you going to do to make that better, make the next day or your next moment, whatever it has to be. So then you just make your life better as a whole. So that's kind of what that is. And I think we're going to dive into a little bit more here about what leadership is.
Yeah, minor setback will help you with a major comeback. And that's ties into leadership big time, quite honestly. And so I'm gonna start off by asking Gannon a question. We're just gonna go rapid fire back and forth with each other and talk about our deep definition and understanding of leadership. We can discuss vocal leaders, quiet leaders, leaders who lead based on their actions and less words. I just want to dive into what we think the word leader means and kind of the whole term as a collective unit leadership. So, what do you think it means, Gannon?
Yeah, you hit on the head there. There's silent leaders and there's vocal leaders. And I think, in my opinion, I think the silent leaders are sometimes more vital for the success of a team, organization, whatever, or if you're working at school, whatever, because those are the people that just go out and get their business done day after day, no matter what it is. They don't have to say anything. You just sit back and watch them, whatever is at your job, with your social life or in an athletic setting. You're seeing them do it even through the good and bads, you know that they're going to show up and get their work in no matter what it is. But the leadership stuff, you got to have it to be successful in whatever you are from many facets of life. And it's a big part because if not, your job, your corporation, your team, whatever it is going to fail if you don't have good leadership. And there's really no days off when you're a leader, and it's huge because you got to have a lot of your single day that's doing the right things. Because if they screw up, then everybody else below them or underneath them are going to be like, okay, well, if he's doing it, then that's okay with me. I can do that type of stuff and take days off. And if you really are working towards something and want to see success, there's really no days off, and that starts with your leadership. So that's kind of what I want to start off with.
I like how you mentioned that right there. If you want to have success, leadership is vital. It's a necessity that every team in the sports world or the business world needs. Your leadership can come from a business owner, the president of the company, the CEO, whatever it is. You got to have someone that allows your team or your business to function at a high rate. And something that when I was doing some research earlier this past week, it kind of popped up into my head something about leadership that it's like a well-oiled machine, and you see that in sports all the time. That well-oiled machine does not operate at its full capacity without someone controlling it, without someone in the lead saying, "All right, we need to do this, and I need you guys to follow." But here's my thing on leadership. Uh, I honestly think that when you mentioned Gannon, you were talking about how silent leaders are vital, and you believe that's like the most important form of leaders. Uh, and I can agree to that in a sense, but I also think that leaders who speak, like vocal leaders, we were talking about that at the beginning, leaders who are willing to be uncomfortable. I think not every leader. Don't come at me for this, but like not every leader is going to talk. And I had a leader like that on my high school team growing up, all across the board, and Zach Cummins, who's now a Division I athlete. He was a leader who didn't talk, but everything he did, people followed because he was a dog. He had a dog inside of him that people wanted to follow and react to. So I think those leaders are very important. It's very important to have those people where you're just like, wow, I don't want to be like him, but I want to do things like him. And if you have people on your team like that, there's really no limit to where you can go. And on the other side of things, I believe, to me, my opinion is the most important leaders are the ones who speak, the ones who are okay with being uncomfortable, stepping outside their comfort zone, and willing to address and have constructive criticism. And I also want to touch on the fact that I think you need a coach who's a leader, which is obvious. That's an obvious statement to make. But while we're on the subject leadership, I kind of want to touch on the fact that I was actually talking about this with my friend last night. We were talking about what type of coach in our day and generation is the most important, and it ties perfectly into leadership. And nowadays, I feel like our generation, like to put it blatant, uh, our generation's softer. Like like the kids that are growing up nowadays are not as willing to have the screamer type of coaches, the coach who chews you out nonstop, the military style coach. Like that's not in style right now for kids growing up in high school. I don't know if you've noticed that, Gannon, but I feel like
That's
that's
out of style. It's not effective anymore. But
it's not. And so that leads me into my tie-in with leadership is that nowadays you need a coach who's willing to like my example right here is the high school that I went to, Akron High School. My brother is currently a senior playing football, and their head football coach will work out with them. He'll sit there and do bench press with them. He'll squat with them. And to me, what that shows is like he's a leader right off the board. He's doing what they're doing, and not all coaches got to do that. Like you don't got to work out with your team. Like that's just my example of it. Like he's willing to be a part of the team. You almost got to be a teammate and a leader as a coach. So, like, what do you think of
you're
that?
100% right on that. That because I remember when we interviewed Brock Kuhner, the Akron football coach, back in December, he hit on this pretty well. And one of the questions we asked him about the way he's coaching and just how everything's changed. And I think, one of the big factors I think is this, Bryce, is that all across the board in all sports, coaches are getting younger and younger. I think that's a
They are.
really big thing. And the good coaches are finding the happy medium of being I wouldn't, I don't want to say buddy or a friend, because that's not what you want to do as a coach, but you want to be on a friendly, fun level with them at times, but then also need to be serious at times. And you can't be that serious, stern guy when you're just super locked in 24/7. Obviously, you
Yeah.
need to have that mindset, but there's also days when you got to step back and be like, okay, we need to have a little fun and keep it loose, because that effective coaching, when you're in somebody's face every day, is just not, it's not working anymore. And this, like you said, that's how our generation has changed stuff. And I think it's good, because I know that even with my coach here at CMU for baseball, he grew up in a military style family because he grew up on a military base. And I've just noticed from even the year and a half that I've been here that he has loosened up on some stuff, and it's really, it makes it more enjoyable to go to practice. He's also very hard nosed when it comes to certain types of stuff on the field and off the field, but he's having more fun. And I think you get more of that as you get along with your coaching life and experiences. You kind of know what the right formula is, and
Yeah.
that's stuff that every coach is trying to find, when to do stuff and when not to do it. But when you can get that good mix, like you said, when Coach Kunder was lifting with them, he's just acting like one of the boys at that time and is just having fun.
Exactly.
But you also got to have the level of commitment of your athletes that when you
Hmm.
step on the field for practice, that is go time no matter what.
Well, and they also,
It's fun, but then it's also got to be hard work.
yeah, and I think they also need to understand that you're still not their friend. Like you're
Yeah,
not friends with your head coach.
you can be
You could be,
friendly.
if friendly. It's like an acquaintance style of friendship in a way where like you look up to your coach as a leader because he's willing to sacrifice his time and his energy to be a part of something with you guys. But I have another question for Gannon. While you were talking about old style of coaching when we were discussing that, but my question is, do you think it's like a generational thing with these older coaches? Like you said, the leagues, it like within the NFL, within college coaches and everything, coaches are getting younger, like you mentioned. So do you think the military style usage of coaching is from the older generation? Because you're not really like these young guys coming in, you don't see that military style coaching from these guys. So I'm kind of wondering if it comes from back in the day, if like that was a style they taught back in the day, or
Yeah,
why.
I've talked to some different people about this type of stuff, and it's just a different way how we've grown up. And I think, with social media, the cell phones, all that different type of stuff,
Yeah.
it's good and bad. 100% it is. There's positives and negatives with everything. But there's a lot more stuff that people 2, 3 generations ago growing up had to work harder for and didn't have as much stuff just granted access to them like we do nowadays. And that's why the younger coaches have come in now. And you're seeing a lot of these coaches that are getting jobs, I mean, just out of nowhere, that you're like, who the hell is that? I mean, they're 29 to 35-year-old guys that are getting these jobs, and it's just a different way of coaching. And you just, in my opinion, you won't see this hard nosed, stern military type coaching all the time ever again in sports, because
Mm-hmm.
there's too much success with it right now. And you're seeing with the young coaches in the NFL with like Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur, how they're flourishing in their coaching situations. They're having fun, because you also got to know that these athletes are also professional athletes, and they already know what they got to do. You don't have to be in their face all the time trying to control them, because they've already done it. They've already had their worth ethic established throughout their whole life. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it's kind of cool because there's the younger coaches now are having this, I'd say, a head up in the coaching world, just because they're this was kind of my idea that I was getting at here, is that the younger coaches are closer out of the playing days than hiring a 56-year-old guy. They're really into it because they just got done coaching and playing within the 5 or 6 years of getting a head coaching job. So they know how to interact more with people our age, because it's tough to be able to communicate on that level on and off the field.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very valid point right there at the end, talking about communication. And I think communicating is also a form of leadership because, like you said, social media. And I almost think that's like, honestly, that's like one of the top reasons why this style of coaching has changed, because people's communication skills have changed. Now, I'm not 100% sold on that statement alone, but I feel like it plays a role in how coaches are nowadays when it comes to leadership. It's because I feel like they know how to talk to the younger generation that we have nowadays. These younger coaches grew up in a generation that was already changing, and there was less less screamers and less vulgar coaches within the league and within even high school. Because I mean, I've seen high school coaches that will scream your ear off until you do something right, and quite honestly, I don't even know how that was ever an effective style of coaching. But it was an effective style of coaching for the older generation, and that's what got them fired up. But for me personally, all I need is a coach who trusts me. I think trust is another thing that plays into leadership. In order to be a good leader, a natural leader, you got to have people who trust you. Teammates have to trust you. Coworkers have to trust you. Your boss has to trust you. In order to have good relationships, your friends have to trust you. Your spouse has to trust you. And trust forms into leadership. Leadership is the basis of being able to communicate and have trust. Like that's my genuine definition of what leadership is, and it's something where someone looks at a person and they're like, "Wow, they're doing the right things. What can I do to adapt and find a way to be like that?" When it comes to leadership, you never want to be exactly like that person who's leading you, but you want to be a person who's willing to accept what they're doing and kind of find a way to incorporate that within your style of being a teammate, being a being a son, being a daughter. You got to find that and understand that because it'll come in handy down the road, especially for us, Gannon. Like when we're parents down the road, we have to be like you have to be a leader as a parent. Your kids
Yeah.
look up to you. Being a leader is literally the fact that people look up to you. It's a
Yeah.
role
So I got a
model.
question for you now.
All right, all
So,
right.
a lot of people say they're natural born leaders, and I don't really buy a whole lot into that. I think it's more of a learned trait as you get older and grow older. So I just want to hear your take. Do you think leaders are more naturally born, or is it more of a learned trait and characteristic as people get older?
All right, so I think I have two opinions on this topic. I think there are some people born as a natural leader, and I think sometimes it's just the way they're wired, and that's not something I can honestly answer because I don't know how the brain works necessarily, so I don't know if it's truly wired within you. But based on my belief, I feel like there are certain people that just get it, and they just when they're born instantly, they're just a person who's going to go pick up a basketball right away, and their friends are going to go pick up a basketball because they're doing it. I just think sometimes when you're born, certain people are willing to step outside their comfort zone in a way more than other people. But the other side of that is I think that it also comes from experience. I think natural leaders are not necessarily natural. I don't really like the term natural leader, and I almost like I'm trying to think of another name for it, but I feel like instead of natural leader, the term should be learned leader because over time I feel like you learn how to be a mature person, and to be a leader, you have to be a mature person in all respects. Like so, I think it comes down to based on your environment, who you hang out with, who your friends are, who you communicate with, how much time you put into social media, if it's an addiction for you, how much time you put into to working out, to playing sports. I think it all comes down to pretty much the experiences you go through in life that kind of make you into that natural, quote unquote, natural leader. That's kind of my thoughts on that, honestly. What else are we thinking? What else are we thinking?
I think some of that too with the natural born leader, and then I think some of that stuff is like you said with the experience as you get older. I think some of the people that are quote unquote natural born leaders are more of your silent leaders because they're more athletically gifted when they're younger in their
Yep.
life, and they don't really have to do anything because they're just that athletically gifted and people feed off of that. And I think that kind of forms into more of the silent leader. And then either that person's just going to keep riding out that athleticism and then be that normal leader, the silent leader, through their actions, or then they're going to either build off of that and be a vocal leader. But as you talked about earlier with the vocal leaders, it's really important because it just sets the tone for everyday type of stuff. Because you got to have it. Because we got some guys here with our baseball program. You got to have it to be effective when it's just going to class, doing your assignments, getting good grades, going to your weight room. Showing up on time is really big. I think is a really big skill that the leadership needs to be displayed on because And like that was one of the bigger things when I was younger with my dad. My dad hated being late to anything. If he was not 15 minutes early, he was freaking out. And those are just little things like you said with how you're raised and with your environment. And some people pick up on their own, no matter their situation. But it also has a big play on how your parents raised you.
I think it comes down to either holding yourself accountable or holding yourself accountable for others. And I think accountability is huge, huge within leadership. Without accountability, like you said, your dad didn't like being late for things. That's a form of leadership. Like we had this saying back in high school. It was like, if you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time.
Yeah.
And like that's another form of leadership. It's someone saying like, come early to work, get some things done before work. And the person who said that, the person who did that, was a person who wanted to better their organization, which is a leader. They were willing to take that initiative to better whatever their responsibility was, and coming in early was one of the ways that they could effectively do that. And another thing with leadership is I'm wearing this Tom Brady T-shirt, this little funny Tom Brady T-shirt, but I think it's kind of funny how he relates to leadership. Quite honestly, when he was with the New England Patriots, and we'll dive into the Bucks, but when he was with the Patriots, him and Belichick obviously great combination, and they won. Robert Kraft and etc. The rest of the staff, but Tom Brady, like he had players that that were role players, but they were starters, and they came to ball. You had guys that were like his receivers. Like obviously he had a guy like Randy Moss. He's had a Julian Edelman, a Rob Gronkowski. He's had some weapons in the past, but how about a guy like Danny Amendola or a guy like Chris Hogan? Those are guys that probably don't start on many teams. But Tom Brady's physical and mental presence of leadership and accountability and just that overall the Patriot way, which Tom and Belichick established, the Patriot way. And I was listening to a podcast the other day about the Patriot way. Actually, it was I Am Athlete, which is Ocho Cinco and Brandon Marshall. They were talking about the Patriot way, and because a couple of them guys have played for the Patriots, so it was kind of funny listening to that. And it's a culture. Culture is established through leadership. And them guys, like, you're going to play for Tom. If you're going to play with Tom Brady, like, it's kind of like, I feel like it would be a scary feeling because you're forced to be accountable. So these weak-minded players, these people who don't hold themselves accountable, all of a sudden have to learn how to do that on the snap because Tom Brady doesn't put up with that crap. So guys like Danny Amendola and Chris Hogan, they make their way into the lineup day in and day out because they're guys who hold themselves accountable. I'm trying to think of some other players, but Josh Gordon played for the Patriots, and Tom Brady is advocates for these players who have off the field issues. And I think the reason behind that is because he's a leader. He's a learned leader, and he wants to help fix these guys' lives and put them back on the right track because that's just the way he's wired. That's the way he's always been. Antonio Brown's an example of that. The Patriots picked him up for what, one game because Tom wanted him, and it's not necessarily because he knows he's a weapon. It's because he understands. Obviously, he understands. Antonio Brown, legit receiver, one of the top 10 receivers this past decade. But they did the same thing with the Buccaneers. Off the field trouble, obviously, that could be an issue, and I'm not advocating for any of that because he obviously has his struggles. But Tom Brady's willing to take a chance on a guy who hasn't held himself accountable for his actions, who hasn't put his teammates first before himself. And I think Tom does that with a lot of guys because of that notion of leadership. And so if you want to know what a true leader is, watch Tom Brady. Not even necessarily watch him play the game of football. Watch what he does when he runs to the sidelines. Watch what he does when his teammate scores a touchdown. It's all about the actions when he's not doing something well. When Tom's not performing great, what is he doing?
Yeah.
He's wired so naturally that there is no negativity. And actually, I want to touch on that. Negativity and positivity.
That was literally just gonna be my next point as I was sitting here. Like try and do it, mate. and when I've been younger, when I was an upperclassman in high school, being a leader, the biggest thing that I look at for somebody and being a good true leader, especially in athletics setting, is throwing away their highs and lows on and off the field and wiping that clean and being the most supportive teammate they can every day, no matter if they go 0 for 3 at the plate, or throw 3 picks as a quarterback, they're still going to be that same person when their teammates are having success. And not everybody's like that. And those are the head cases that are not leaders.
Cancer.
And some people that think they are, yeah, and they end up thinking that they might be a leader, but they're really not. And that's what makes it so tough, because being a leader is not easy. Like you just talked about all the Tom Brady success. He's the only guy who's done the NFL, and you're seeing some of that stuff with LeBron in the NBA with the LeBron effect whenever he goes somewhere new to play. But
people follow.
You got to be able to
leader.
You got to be able to set your personal stuff aside, and because at the end of the day, being a better teammate and a better person is going to get you farther along than just worrying about your individual stats for the day. But that's kind of one of my biggest things, that you should be able to look at your leader on the field, and you should be able to tell whether or not they're having their best game ever or their worst game of their life. They should be there no matter what for their teammates and supporting them from the start and the end of the game.
Well, you mentioned positivity a couple seconds ago, but so positivity and negativity, those play a role within leadership. And like you said, you'll be able to tell if someone, like, you'll be able to tell blah, blah, blah about a player. But my stance on that is, like, you shouldn't be able to tell if a leader's having a bad game or not, because they remain so even keeled, and so like they stay in that happy medium.
Body language is the big thing.
Yeah, and that's something we learned growing up playing sports, is when the highs are good, you don't ever want to catch yourself up being that celebratory guy who is like, wow, 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 we're up 30-0. No, you don't want to be that person. Being that person will allow you to lose that 30-0 game, 31-30. And when it's going bad and you're down 30-0, you don't want to be the guy who's here and then suddenly goes there. You want to be the guy who stays in that happy medium all the time. You don't want to be the guy who looks too hyped when something goes great, and you don't want to be the guy who's got his head down crying when the game's going terrible. Because my ultimate definition of leadership is, if you remain in that even keeled state of mind, nobody can break you. You are freaking unbreakable, mentally and physically. Because if you're willing to take bad plays and good plays too, and combine that and remain in the same spot while the game's going, you will be so much better off for success. And obviously, it's okay when the game's over, you win. You win the game 30-0. You're gonna go celebrate. Be happy when it's over. Be happy with the end result, not the current state of it. If you're happy with the end result, that shows that you had some leaders that were willing to stay even keeled and keep you within a game, or keep that score 30-0, or come back from down 30. That's kind of my take on it. Like, I've seen players who do that way too often, and it's noticeable too. A leader's not someone who's going to be out on the field walking down like this with his head down. That's not a true leader. That's someone who may lead in certain circumstances, but a leader who's someone who leads in every single circumstance, whether it's bad, good, terrible, great. At the end of the day, Tom Brady was that example of it. I've never seen the man walk off the field with his head down, ever. I just haven't seen it. And look at the result. Just won his 7th Super Bowl. Like, and his actions speak for itself. He's not really a loud guy on the field. Do you think? Other than that, that Matthew Tyler, not Tyler. I about to say Tyler Matthews, our friend, but
Tyrann Mathieu.
Honey Badger, yeah, Honey Badger. That was one game where I think Florida Tom came into action. He was all fired up, running down the field, freaking swinging his arms and stuff. But
I got a question for you, because you've talked about establishing the culture and you want to be a future coach for a football team someday. It's a tough question and all that, but what are going to be some of your earlier things that you're going to do as soon as you get a head coaching job, or even an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator? What are going to be some of the first things you do to establish a culture and be a leadership figure for your athletes? Like, what are some things? Because I know you think about a lot and write a lot of stuff down. What is it? I'm curious to hear it.
Well, first off, I appreciate the question because I haven't really had the opportunity to kind of discuss what I want to implement with culture. And
And this has nothing to do X and O's. This is just
oh yeah,
straight your
100%.
player and coach relationship.
Yeah, and based on my interviews with head coaches, uh, I now firmly understand that X's and O's come. They come, and building a culture and establishing that is the most important, single most important aspect within any realm of sport. And for me to grasp that, I've kind of, like Gannon said, I've been writing stuff down. I've been taking notes, and my initial things that I want to do when I walk in the door as a head coach, as a assistant coach, whatever type of coach I am, I'm still going to work and work my tail off to bring that culture into a roster. But my idea, first off, I want to start off by getting to know an individual, every single individual within the team. And I don't say that like I want to be buddy buddy with them. I want to sit down and hear their story, kind of like what I do on this interview. I want to hear people talk. And some people get caught up in the fact that all coaches do is talk. Some don't listen enough. To be an effective coach and establish a culture, you got to be someone who your players know that they can come talk to. You got to be someone that they know they can come to when they have an issue in school that you can help them out with, an issue off the field, whatever it is. And me, by initially coming into a team and working my tail off to learn who people are as individuals, and like I feel like when you initially come in, I don't want to be worried about the team aspect of it right away. And a lot of people would come in and be like, all right, we're going to be this collective unit, which yeah, that will be established. A team atmosphere will be established
Yeah, you
without a
got to
doubt.
bring something different to the table than what other coaches do
Yeah.
already.
So I want to bring in an individual based mindset right away, which is not, this has nothing to do with playing the sport. It has everything to do with them as kids and athletes getting to know their coach and me getting to know them. So we have a relationship that goes back and forth. The trust is there, the leadership is there. And I want them to understand that. Another thing is I want to be able to kind of do similar stuff to what Coach Kunder does at Akron. I admire his coaching style, and I admire that whole coaching staff over there at Akron, where my ex high school, and I also admire Anthony Dedman after hearing his story with Freeport. And I support both these area coaches, and I think they're doing a hell of a job. And I've taken some notes on them. Uh, I like the working out with players, personally. I mean, obviously, it's going to keep me in shape. I wouldn't say keep me in shape. It's going to get me back into shape. Uh, but working out with your players or just doing something like, say we're in a drill on the field and it's offensive individual drills and I see a receiver doing something wrong that I feel like I can fix because I was a receiver in high school and I understand some footwork stuff. So if I see a receiver doing something wrong with his feet, I want to be the coach that goes over there and demonstrates it. I want to be a demonstrator and less of a drill sergeant. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be like,
Yeah, you don't want
do
to just be
this.
yelling at them what to do. You want
Yeah,
to actually show them.
I don't want to say, all right, break up, go an individual, 5 minutes, get with your assistant coaches. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be that person who bounces around. I want to learn about the offensive line. I want to learn about wide receivers, running backs, defensive linemen, linebackers, safeties, corners. I want to learn about all the individual aspects of the game. And if I know all my team well, if I know and trust them, they're going to be happy to have me come over there and kind of see how their learning progress is going and see if I can promote it in any way. And so back to my example on that, if someone's doing something wrong with their feet as a receiver, if I come over there and address it and say, all right, sir. And that's another thing is I think you should treat your athletes as adults. Don't treat them as if they are below you. And that's another thing I want to establish. Treat them like they're there with you. Obviously, you have higher authority, but don't show them that. Don't tell them that all the time. Don't be like, oh, I got more authority than you. You have to do this because I'm this. Be someone who understands that they're part of your team and you're a part of their team. It's their team just as much as it is yours as a coach. And so I just ultimately I want to be a leader, and that's why I like talking about this leadership conversation. And I want to be someone who establishes that culture right off the bat by just earning trust and establishing relationships. I feel like it'll go a long way in making a collective unit. work well together.
Yeah, they're on there with them. For, I've seen more so with Anthony Devin or Freeport what he does, and what makes a coach great in my eyes, instead of just being a good coach, is what they do off the field. The rest of the 22
Yep.
hours of the day, not just your 2 to 3 hours of workouts and stuff. Because there's some coaches, as soon as their practice is done, they go home and don't even speak to their kids or don't do type of stuff. It's during the off season. You want to just text your players, give them a quick FaceTime, again with social media and just cell phones as a whole. Reach out to them, ask them about certain stuff that has nothing to do with the sport that you guys are involved in. Just little type of stuff that you can build that relationship and feel like there's something stronger between you two, other than just being a coach-player relationship. And I think that's really big. Ask them, about their home life. Ask them how their schoolwork's going. Just don't always just jam sports down your throat, because they're not going to want to talk to you when something important comes up in their life, because you want to be able to have that relationship where if something pops up in your kids' lives or your own players' lives, that they can feel comfortable to come and talk to you at a moment's notice, and that you're going to give them good advice to handle that situation.
Yeah, for sure. And before we wrap this up, I just want to say, personally, if you want to be a leader, you got to be willing to ask yourself the question that other people are going to ask themselves. Can you trust yourself? Can others trust you? When you want to be a leader and you want to be a vocal leader, a leader who leads based on his actions, you have to ask yourself, do you trust yourself? If you trust yourself and you know yourself very well, it's going to work out great. That's my final thoughts on it.
No, you're 100% right. But yeah, we'll catch you guys next week or this coming week. This is a Monday drop. We'll see you guys on Friday. It's going to be a cool episode and interview with a special guest. You guys are going to really like this one, and I know we're looking forward to it. But catch up on some of these past videos. We got Matt Shaver's interview that just dropped this past Saturday, and it's a really good one about multi-sport athletes. But just keep going back on some of our old stuff. There's little bits and pieces that you can take out from watching 5 to 10 minutes of each video that you can incorporate into your life, and that's the biggest thing we're doing with this. But as always, keep liking, viewing, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Again, please give us some feedback. We're really hungry to hear what you guys think and what we can do to improve it, because we just want to have this podcast be like a well-oiled machine, like we were talking about earlier,
Yep.
all the way around, and that includes from our viewers and everybody giving us feedback.
Yeah, for sure. And lastly, I forgot to mention our three sponsors are Driftless Quality Wear, 312 Beef and Sausage, and Bacher Auto Group. Check them out. Two of them are located in Freeport, Illinois. Bacher Auto Group and 312 Beef and Sausage. Two amazing places ran by two amazing guys. Uh, check them out for sure. Driftless Quality Wear has a website online. Check them out. Use the code football365 for 10% off at the checkout, and they are also based out of Iowa. So we appreciate you guys, and we will catch you Friday.